An RV refrigerator is one of those things that most people take for granted unless it doesn't work right. Getting stuck without a functioning fridge would not be a good thing, especially if it's full of groceries. There are 3 mods that I think every RV fridge should have. They are fairly easy to do, aren't too expensive, and can really help keep it running at its best. I have my new KZ Durango 5th wheel camper, and I'm going to be doing these mods on the refrigerator. The new parts are already here, so let's hop to it. The very first thing I do to my camper's refrigerator is install louver covers. These are the stainless steel screens that cover the openings in the outside refrigerator. It sounds simple, but many people don't do this. I'll explain why you should. Pull an outside cover off the fridge on your camper. Do you see these wide open vents? These are perfect to let all sorts of things like bees, wasps, hornets, lizards, and even snakes and spiders into the back of your refrigerator. Once these uninvited guests are in there, they can do all sorts of mayhem. In my area, mud wasps are always getting into everything, leaving their mud tubes everywhere. Even worse would be honeybee hive or hornet's nests. Spiders can be a particularly bad issue as some of them like to spin their webs in tight areas. I've heard of refrigerators that won't fire up because the propane orifice is plugged with webbing. The best way to avoid these problems is simply to keep the offenders out. Although they can be a little pricey, vent screens are the easiest way to help keep your fridge pest-free. Just measure the length and order as many as you need. In my case, I need 6 screens. To install them, just place them on the outside of the vent and use wire ties to secure them in place. I don't use the provided clear wire ties as they aren't UV rated and will deteriorate in the sun. I use 3 ties per screen. I have read that some people don't like the idea of putting screens over the RV appliances because they think they may cause them to run inefficiently or not vent properly. Personally, I don't feel that covering openings with screens that are designed for that purpose is really going to have a major effect on airflow. It definitely won't have as much effect as getting a giant honeycomb or wasp nest in your fridge, water heater, or furnace. Now my refrigerator vents are all covered. While I was at it, I went ahead and ordered the covers for the furnace and the water heater too. Most RV fridges are absorption refrigerators. They work on a simple heat exchange principle, and they don't have compressors like your kitchen refrigerator does. That means they have less moving parts. One of the parts that they should have and often do not is an air circulation fan for inside the cabinet. So why do they need this? Since cold air is heavier than warm air, they place the condenser fins at the top of the refrigerator cabinet. The fins are what transfers the cold. The idea is the cold air will flow down to the bottom of the cabinet, chilling the entire fridge. In theory, that works, but in reality, not so much. Refrigerators are made to hold food, and when you start packing in the groceries, you create air pathways that can keep the cold air from reaching all of the nooks and crannies in the cabinet. Some areas will get colder than others. Using a fan pushes the air around and helps eliminate these zones. Whenever you open the fridge door, you upset whatever thermal balance there is in the cabinet, allowing cold air to pour out. The more you open it, the more you unbalance it. Okay, knock it off. A fan will force the air back into the areas and help replenish the lost cold air. Since the fins are producing the cold air, they can also be prone to icing. A layer of ice can hamper the efficiency, so it's best to keep them ice-free. They have a system to help with that, but just circulating air around them is the best. There are fan units designed for this purpose. I chose this one off of Amazon. It's a 3-fan device from a company called Magula. The price was a lot more reasonable than a lot of the other units. This device is very well built with a solid steel case, 3 2.5-inch fans, and its own on-off switch. It also has an odd pigtail with an inline connector that I won't really need. Attaching this is easy. There are 4 alligator clips that clamp securely onto the condenser fins. You do have to tie this into your camper's 12-volt system to power it up. For me, it was easy to patch into the fridge's 12-volt LED light. Like most newer RV refrigerators, once its power is turned on, the LED light comes on and stays on. There is no door switch to shut it off, so it's perfect and convenient power source. I clip the power lead to the proper length, tapped into the light's connector, and this job is done. The fans are fairly quiet at only 32 decibels and can barely be heard with the door closed. RV refrigerators generate a lot of heat in the outside compartment. This heat exhausts naturally through the upper vent, which is either on the camper's roof or, like mine, in the upper side wall. Using natural convection isn't the best way to get rid of this latent heat, and people have been putting in extra fans to power vent this area and make the refrigerator run more efficiently. Adding a fan can drop the freezer temperature 4 degrees or more and will help keep your food cold and safe. In my Durango, Norcold has already installed a single 5-inch fan below the upper heat exchanger. It was a valiant effort, but I'm going to improve it and make it a much better setup. People will argue whether it's better to put exhaust fans at the top of the chamber, put intake fans at the bottom, or install one of each. I like to install my fans at the top to exhaust the hot air. Why? I feel that air can act like a bunch of loose strings. It's much easier and more efficient to pull a string than it is to try to push it, so forcing air in will create currents and eddies that will swirl around and may not take the most efficient path through the exhaust port. Drawing air out should keep the airflow more laminar and more efficient. Am I right? I think so, but you install yours any way you want. The existing fan is buried below the upper coil and cannot be reached as it is. I prefer something that is more serviceable, so I will be modifying. I purchased a pair of Thermalake 200mm Pure 20 series black fans. Their larger blades will move much more air at a lower RPM, making these more efficient and at only 28 decibels much quieter than the existing 5-inch fan. The current fan moves the air at a maximum of 110 CFM, while these will move almost 130 CFM each, so both together could move over 260 CFM. That should really help keep things cool. I start by mounting the fans side by side on the upper vent, making sure they are exhausting the air. I use a combination of some hot glue and silicone sealant to attach them securely. Next, I cut the power leads and solder them together. Remember the inline connector that was on the inside cabinet fan unit? This is a perfect use for it, and I solder one of the lines to the fan connection. Now, if I ever have to remove the upper panel, I can easily disconnect the fans. In the upper vent, I have to cut away the sheet metal panels so that the new fans will fit. I take a few measurements and outline what I need to remove. A bit of cutting with some aviation shears is all it takes. You can see that with the sheet metal removed, I can now get to the old fan. I may as well remove it. It still works and I'll be repurposing it for another future project. Since there was already a fan installed, there were already 12-volt power leads tapped into the system. If there weren't, I would need to trace the refrigerator wiring and find a good 12-volt source. Luckily, this power is run off a switch circuit, so it only is energized when the refrigerator is powered on. If it wasn't, I'd probably install an on-off switch so I could shut it off if necessary. Another thing that's already installed is a thermostat snap disc temperature switch. This is normally open and closes when the temperature reaches 130 degrees Fahrenheit, activating the fan. I think that 130 degrees is a bit too high, and I'd rather run the fans at a lower temperature, so I replace it with one that activates at 110 degrees. To finish the assembly, I connect the other power lead to the existing wiring, connect it to the fan lead, and reinstall the panel. Now, whenever the rear of the fridge starts to warm up, the fans activate and almost silently draw out the hot air. Thanks for following along. Please high-five the like icon, jingle the notification bell, and become a subscriber to my channel. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, keep camping.